We're going to talk about custom fields today. It was requested by someone on the site and on the Facebook group, and I put something together, and it's fairly comprehensive. There's going to be some things that I'm going to leave out just for time purposes, but custom fields are kind of Pixify's way of saying you get to personalize how Pixify looks and feels. Custom fields are, for the most part, in events, and they are in client records. So for the events, you can get to the custom fields for events via Things to Do, Events, and the Custom Fields tab. For any of you who have not been here before or with me before, I always try to go through a slideshow first just so you can get an idea of how things look, how I'm going to approach things, and then we'll get into it on the Pixify side, just so you kind of know how things work. So the client custom fields are accessed via the Contacts, Clients, Custom Fields tab. And in both of these, as far as the tabs are concerned, just about every page has some kind of tab that you can access. Let's see, next. What can you use custom field for? Well, the simple answer is really anything. You can really use the custom fields for virtually any item that you want to, even if it is a redundant item, as in something that's already covered by Pixify. Pixify doesn't care what you call it. It doesn't care what you ask for. Pixify just allows you to use custom fields for anything. You can use it for recording information not otherwise covered by Pixify fields in client records. You can set up yes/no questions. You can set up text information. You can set up numeric info. You can set up dates and times, and you can set up a lot of multiple choice information. So there's a lot of ways that you can use custom fields on both the client record and on the event record to customize how things work in general. Give me just a second to make an adjustment to because I don't want to lose audio by transmitting video. So there's a lot of ways for you to be able to set these custom fields. Another reminder, as we go, one of the things that I prefer to work through is that if you have questions, go ahead and ask them at the time during the chat, using the chat box on Zoom, and I'll get to them all at the end. And sometimes they're covered, so it just keeps me from being redundant. So where can you use the custom field information? Well, obviously you can use them in email templates. It would be kind of silly to have custom fields and not be able to use them in the email templates. And I'm going to go over, of course, how to use all of these things. You can use them on event and client records to store information you may want to know about a client, for example. You can use them during calls or in-person data. You can it's visible directly during a client or info screen. And you can put stuff into contracts too, maybe something that you've asked them that they want specifically, or things that they want specifically. So you don't have to necessarily adjust a contract. You can just include it as an addendum. How can I collect the custom field information? Well, you can ask for it when they are on the phone, and you can fill it in yourself. You can ask for custom fields in an inquiry form, so in your standard contact form. In proposal data, when you are having people fill out a proposal, the custom field data can be asked for at that time. In booking pages, so anywhere that it asks for things like the name and address information, you can have it ask for custom field information as well, whether it is pertinent to the client information or it is pertinent to the event information. You can also prompt for custom fields in questionnaires, remembering again that Pixify does not care specifically what a custom field does or is. And therefore, in a questionnaire, if you ask for a yes or no question, that you have a custom field for that is a yes or no question, it will just transfer that data over to that custom field and save it for you. Okay, and I'm going to show, of course, most of these as examples when we get into it. So obviously you want to put a plan together for how you want to record information. Some people record different types of information. I know that one suggestion, for example, was what is your favorite color? So that if you're doing maybe a digital background, or if you want to send a card or flowers as a thank you, if you want to use that specific question to answer what color card or flowers should I send, or balloon, whatever it is you're going to send. These are the things that you need to know in advance. Like anything else that I have tried to point out for any of the tutorials that I've given, what is desperately important is that you pre-plan everything so that you understand where you are going to be once this information is presented to the client. So what do you want? For example, some event information, custom fields that you may want to create may include how many people are going to be in your photo session. Is there an electrical outlet nearby? This might be useful for photo booth people. Select which items you want to use, for example, for a photo booth, prop sets, wigs, clothing. How many people are you expecting for your event? So those are just a few examples of event information. Client information, like I just brought up. What is your favorite color? Do you prefer coffee or tea? What kind of vehicle do you drive? What color is your vehicle? This becomes more important nowadays when there's a lot of curbside service. We want to know what your vehicle is and what color it is, so we know when we come out and look for you to get your order to you that we're not looking for a blind car or a car that only you can see. So what we're going to do at this point, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Pixifi. This is mine. And we're going to go to, first of all, clients, because clients is a little bit easier time of it because there aren't so many special conditions under client custom fields. And I'm going to delete a couple of these. Well, no, I'm not. I'm not going to delete that. And in clients, the custom fields tab is where you're going to set up any of your custom fields. Before we go on, so you know, this will allow you, these particular prompts will allow you to select the type of custom fields that you want to see. So in this case, I'm looking at all types of custom fields, either wedding or non-wedding. And that's internal to Pixifi. It's not something that I created. And then which brand I want to look at. Is it all brands or is it just one particular brand? So if I select a brand, for example, that has no custom field set up for it, it will show me all of those. Well, it'll show me empty right now because there's no custom field set up for my photography or my wedding brand. But if I have it set up for my portrait brand, it would show me the portrait questions like that. Seniors, any that are specific to high school seniors. In this case, I asked them what their high school is. I asked them what their high school graduation year is, and their name if they are a senior model. And this is when I used to do a senior modeling program. Stop doing that too. Seems like I'm just a lazy photographer now, doesn't it? But when I have all brands turned on, you can see that I also have one set up for my wife's business where she's asking information about lowercase last name, which applied to some kind of project she was doing where she was creating badges for a show that she did last year. So when you're adding custom fields to your client setup, there's a number of different things you can add to it. Including the label. The label custom field is just display text. It's not a question, it's not a prompt. It only displays information to someone. Now, you're probably thinking, well, where would this be useful? But imagine for a moment that you are looking at a proposal and it goes your address, your city, state, zip, country, and then just below that it says, what's your favorite color? Maybe instead what you want to have is something that is a little bit more definitive, like the questions below will help us better serve you, something like that. And you can give a detailed explanation, because there's no limit to how much you can put in here, as to what they are seeing in the prompts which follow. Okay, and this would only be displayed if it were for a specific brand and or for a specific client type. Okay, so you can make that determination so that it only displays when these conditions are met, or if you want it to show to everyone. The questions below will help us better serve you, or whatever you want to say. Okay, fill in the following at your, it's not my spelling day, at your own peril. Whatever you want to say. I'm sure there's a lot of ways for everyone to follow through on that. But that is just one custom field that you can add, which actually gives kind of a preview of the custom fields that are about to be asked. Now, another type, of course, is the text input, and this is where you might say, what is your favorite color? We're going to use the British version since we have a Brit on board with us. Now, required means they must answer. I guess that's goes pretty much without saying, but I wanted to make sure you understood that when you do this, if they don't answer the question, it will not move forward in the system. The system is set up so that if a custom field is required, they must put something in it. There is a workaround for that, and you can include that in your label text if you want, is if they don't want to answer the question, they can use 2 spaces. I learned this from Tim. The same conditions apply. You can limit to a specific brand, or you can limit it to a specific type. And these are the only conditionals that you will find under client stuff. For things like field size, this is the field size as it appears on screen. It is not the amount of data, okay? So field size of 35 means that it's only going to be 35 characters wide. It does not mean that it is limited to 35 total characters, if that makes sense. And then you also have another flag here called private, and it determines the visibility on public pages. And public pages are anything that your client sees. Okay, you can add a custom field to a client record, for example, that you can make private that you don't want them to see. For example, does this person have a bad attitude? Well, do you want your client to see this? I would think not. This is something that you would make as a private custom field, or describe this person as attitude, because this is a text field. Describe this person's attitude. So those are just ways to use the private field. Private is available in all different types. Let's look at the next type, which is text area. Text area is a block of text area, and again, it is not limited by how much you see here. This just limits how big the box is, not how much data it will store. I always use 45 by 5, and this may be something like, how do we get to your house? Okay, and yes, you would definitely want to require that, and they could just fill that in. And when you save that, the way things appear on the page or on your templates is obviously the question is here, whether or not it was required, and whether or not it is required, or whether it is not as something that is available for a specific brand. Okay, it does not show you the information on whether or not it's for a type. For example, if we go back in here and we change this to wedding client and save it, it doesn't show that it's only for a wedding client. It will only display that it is for a specific brand that you have in your system. So I'm just going to change that back to all types because I'm going to use this in a few minutes. So a couple of the others, multiple choice. What are your children's ages. Now I'm asking that without giving any consideration to the fact that there is a relationships tab on Pixifi, but that's irrelevant right now. So we're going to use combo box and not required because not everybody has children. Say 1 to 3, 4 to 6. Oh, for pity's sake, 7 to 10, and 11 to 18. Okay. So when you're using these, what will happen is they will see these in a drop down and they can pick the ones that they want. Because of the type that I'm using a combo box, it will drop down and allow them to check it off. Like this checkbox, they will show all 4 items and they can check off the ones that apply. On a combo box, it drops down and they are allowed, or they are select the ones they want. And a radio button shows them a list, but only allows them to select one. And in this case, I want them to be able to drop down and select as many as they want. So I'm going to save that. And then on to the others. Yes or no is, whatever you might want to know yes or no on. Do you have hair? Yes, no. And that's not funny if you've got male pattern baldness, I guess, but it's a good question. What color is your hair? No, that's not a yes or no question. But you can think of all the yes or no questions that you want to ask. Rating. How would you rate your experience with us? And that's, you can change the number of stars. You can go up to 10. You can get super precise and say up to 100, but I think 10's my limit. I don't want to tell you how to run your business, but 10's kind of fine. And rating can be used for other things too. All it does in a rating is, because you are asking the question, it doesn't matter what you are rating for. Okay. You can ask, how do you feel about trees on a scale of 1 to 5? How do you feel about areas where people may be smoking on a scale of 1 to 5? So those are just various things that you can ask for on yes or no questions. Numeric range, this is something that I could actually have used for children, but that was a specific list. This is a non-specific list. This non-specific list is how many children will be present. And once I learn how to type, the starting number 1 to 10, incremental value is 1, so that means it will show 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way up to 10. You can change the increment, so if it is another question, what is your favorite time of day? And you can start with 0, go up to 45 in increments of 15. So it's 15, 30, 45, or 0. That's a dumb way to do it, but I don't know. I'm just thinking outside the box. There's just so, and the reason why I try to do that is to make sure that you understand that the hope is that you will be able to use this for whatever you want to use it for. Okay, there's no real limitations here. Like I said, Pixifi doesn't care what you put in. It doesn't care what you ask for. It will store the information without prejudice. Okay. And finally, of course, there's the date and time, and these are a-specific as well. Although it does do a check for a properly formatted date. The time, I think, is stored as a text, so you can ask for. You might be able to ask for information like when did you get your most recent car, something like that. Because birthday and there are birthday and anniversary fields already stored in Pixifi, as well as children's birthdays on the relationships tab. I can go over that at any time if anybody wants to. All right, so this is the setup for using custom fields in the client area. Okay, under here or under the settings, there's no way to preview them. Once they're set up, they can only be previewed when you use them. All right, so we're going to move from the clients to the events. While that's taking its good time, I shall take a beverage. And no, I am not day drinking. I'm drinking coffee right now. All right, so on your schedule, these were all canceled. How sad is that? Boy, I had a whole bunch of good dance portraits set for one day. Boy, that was a bummer. So under my custom fields for events, presently I have one for the for portraits, for all portrait sittings, and this only appears really on my inquiry page, asking them what type of session they're interested in. So this would only appear if they are interested, for example, in a session. And I have the default as the portrait type on this particular brand, portraits, limited to this type. And the difference here on custom fields for events is that the types here are the event types that you have already set up in Pixifi. So under the event types here, the ones that are available in your types for custom fields are pretty much everything that's listed. And especially, I think it's only for things that are public. So yeah, no, it's everything. So this is listing all of my event types. So if you set up an event type here, you can set up an event or a custom field that is specific to an event type. For example, let's say I'm asking a question of someone for this event type. Do you want your session outside? But I only want to ask that question, and this might be a yes or no, if they are a portrait client under my portrait brand, and only if they are asking about portrait or family portraits, because we only do those on location anyway. So when this comes up, the only people who will be asked this question are people who are inquiring on this brand and people who are inquiring about family portraits. Everybody else, it will just not show this prompt to. Okay. You can also, just like you could on client custom fields, you can specifically select the brand that you want to come up. On this, if I select all brands, it'll show me all of my custom fields, but I only have the 2 at the moment. And I don't really need this one. This was for a test I did for wedding info. So on custom fields for other things, it still has all of the same fields in here. Text area, the multiple choice in 3 different ways, yes or no, the rating from 1 to whatever it is you want to set up, and the numeric ranges like I showed you before. And things that may be more specific in events are things like how many people are coming to the session, not how many people are in your family, or how many dogs are you bringing, how many horses will be there, that kind of thing. Text area might include things like how do we get to the campground that we're coming to for your portraits. Multiple choice might include things specific to an event. How many cameras do you want us to bring? For example, a videographer. How many additional photo booths do you want us to bring if you're a photo booth operator? And these are things that are, remember, specific to an event. And each new event for a client has a new set of custom fields. Okay, and that becomes important too, because if you have one event on the 1st of the month and you have another event for the same client 30 days later, each event has their own set of custom fields, and that is relevant to everything that you have to do with these with your client record or for your clients, because every session or every event that you schedule in Pixify is treated differently than any of the others, even if it's for the same client. All right, so now we can kind of go back and look at how these are best used in Pixify. First, though, because I've gone through one full phase of how to set these silly things up, I'm going to look at some of your questions and see if I can answer them for relative perspective to where we are. Is it possible to populate the client alert that appears at the top of the client entry with text from a custom field? For example, the name of a client's let to appear at the top on the alert when I open the client's record rather than the event record. To my knowledge, no. If we're in the client record and you are editing a client, well, I'll just search for me, because you have yourself in there as a client, right? Because if you don't, you won't have a good way to test. So if I were to, if you're talking about the internal warning, if you don't see the little box that says that we use for variables and tokens on the front edge of a text box, then you can't put anything that has a variable or token. Now you can include specific custom fields as part of what you do. For example, these are the two custom fields that I added for the client record. How do we get to your house? What are your children's ages? And they can answer those however. But there isn't currently a way to add anything to the internal warning. And if you're doing notes, which are here, there is no way, or that I know of, to add specific variables or tokens to these fields because there is no variable or token icon. Okay. And then the next question is, I just saw all of your brands. Do you mean you have all the different kinds of genres you shoot? You actually create a different brand? Yes and no. And the reason why I did that originally was because when I was talking to Tim, and this was like 6 or 7 years ago when I was talking to Tim about setting up my Pixify, I got the impression that so many things could be divided up how they operate based on brand. And I kept thinking, well, that's really a good idea. If I can break up how I respond to things based on brand, that's great. And the only redundancy is that I have multiple brands. So I have a wedding brand that obviously is specific to weddings. I have a seniors brand that is obviously specific to seniors. I have one that is specifically for portrait settings. We also do custom framing. My wife is an efficient. My wife is also a wildlife photographer. I do workshops and I do this stuff. So one of the reasons was if I am under my client information, we'll just go back to the client records here for a second. If I am setting up these various custom fields, one of the ways that I can activate them is by the specific brand. So if I'm set up for my portrait brand and I want to add a new custom field, and that custom field is what kind of portraits are you interested in? Sometimes I would leave this kind of thing freeform simply because people don't know necessarily what the difference between a kid's portrait and a family portrait is. So if you let them just do something freeform like this, they'll answer it correctly. But this should only show up for me with my portrait brand. So when I save this, now the only thing that someone who is coming in under my portrait brand would be asked would be this thing. And that would be, what kind of portraits are you interested in? And I think that's relevant to the brand, or to the specific brand, because I can break it down by different types of things that I do. Seniors, I'm only going to ask high school seniors what high school they go to and what their graduation year is. I'm not going to ask that, for example, of my wedding clients. It doesn't make sense to do that. And it's, honestly, it looks a little unprofessional if you have a wedding client or someone who is asking about wedding information and they get, what is your high school? So, well, dude, we're 45 years old. It's been a little while since we've been to high school. Why do you care? So, and that's the specific reason why I set it up to be brand specific and why I have so many different brands. And you're absolutely right, Madison. Maybe that is why custom fields irritate me, because I only want certain fields on certain types of clients. And I think for clients, if you have the ability to break it down by brand, it's a lot easier. But one of the things that I recently talked with Tim about, and don't tell him you got this from me, but one of the things that I recently talked with him about is adding, instead of this being the type wedding or non-wedding, instead of it being that, change it so that it is based on client category. Okay, remember, we have our client categories: a portrait category, the senior category, dance, restoration, all those things. So if you could set up custom fields that were based on the category of the client, or the category that the client was assigned to, this would make custom fields just so much more powerful than wedding or non-wedding, I feel. And that way you could just set up everything under one brand. You could just have your one brand, and you could have all your different categories. I would have if it was a category for senior, I would only ask them the stuff that I would normally ask under the senior's brand. I think that just makes a whole heck of a lot more sense than just wedding, non-wedding. And I have talked to him about it, and I've added it to the wish list. Another question, just a note on display text here. It can include HTML, which is a really nice feature. I use it to link to our terms and conditions, and that is true. You can include links in there and other stuff, even pretty stuff. Okay, so another question, field size. I created a questionnaire for the bride, and I created it and went way beyond the 45 size I created. Can I change the size after the fact? You can change the way a box appears after the fact. This one, for example, it shows as a 35 characters wide, but if I were to set a box for information, let's just call this test for the moment, and I set it, it was originally set at 45 by 45. Well, that's a massive box. Okay, but it's not going to show up under that brand. That's a massive box. Look at that thing. And you're asking if you can change it after the fact. Well, yes. So if I change this to a size of 10 and I save it, now when it displays, it's going to display in a smaller box. If the amount of data that goes in the box exceeds the size of the display box, you'll just have a scroll bar here on the right side, and you can just scroll up and down to look at the data. You can also, of course, for boxes like this, you can expand the visible size just by dragging and dropping this corner anchor. Next question. There's a bug with the text area, as when the user creates a carriage return, it includes this as return instead of the carriage return. When you spoke to Tim about it, but I don't think he ever fixed it. Yeah, I don't know about that. That's definitely a Tim thing. If it's a program thing, it's definitely Tim. On yes, no inputs, the required option doesn't appear to do anything. It would be really handy if it did so, could be used for things like, do you agree to our terms? That's a good point. The required is supposed to operate the way that I described it, but if it's not, that's definitely something you need to bring up to Tim. The best way to preview what a client sees, well, make yourself a client. Just set up a Jessica and make sure that Jessica gets to see everything before the client does. I do that with my stuff. I have set myself up as a client, And I am, in my own system, I am a perpetual lead. I am always a lead because I want to see what is happening out there, to what my clients see, what my prospects see. When I set up something new for my clients, like I did for my guest list to my YouTube channel, for example, I tested everything to make sure that it looks at least halfway decent, so that I'm not sending out crazy stuff to people that it doesn't make any sense for. So you should definitely set yourself up as an individual in your own system. That's just so important. And then Graham answered the question. Graham, you're so helpful. I think I want to hire you later, but we'll talk. And then, yes, I agree. I don't know what that was for, but exactly. I just do not want to re-enter all my products and brand setup. Oh, you don't have to. That's the cool thing about the templates, is templates are not brand specific. And if you'll look at your templates, and don't laugh at mine, but I don't have very many. When you are looking at filters for your, is that right? Oh, the only filters that really apply to your products is the year. And of course, the default is for the current year, but there's a ton of stuff in here. And since there is nothing specific to a brand, you can use any of these for any brand. And one of the things that I had to come up with for a client, for example, who sells 8x10s under their family brand at a different price than they sell for 8x10s on their senior brand, is we had to come up with a naming convention, SR, for example, 8x10, and the senior 8x10 was like $10 more, something like that. And you can differentiate if you have different pricing, but if you don't have different pricing, you don't have to change a thing. All products are available to all brands, and I think that's the way it should be. After the client has answered the questionnaire, and submitted it, I want to print it out and show the client's answers. Oh, me too. So, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute. Or how do you use these freaking things, right? So let's go back to the events and make sure I set up the event custom fields that I wanted to. And I want to show you how to use these things now we've set them all up and answered a bunch of questions. Custom fields. Okay, so we want to add one more custom field for text area. Describe. I've seen this so many times that I can probably quote it back and forth. Describe the kind of portrait experience you've been hoping for all your life. Okay, I don't know why it's defaulting to 45 here, but it's annoying the heck out of me. I'm just going to leave it at 10. And this is going to be for my portrait brand and only for family portraits. Save. Okay, so this will only show up for my portrait brand and only for the event type of family portraits. Okay, so let's go to our questionnaire. Whoops, our questionnaire templates. Bring those up, and this is one of the ways, of course, that you can set up your how to use your custom fields, and this is an important place to select them. We're going to do, this is a test questionnaire. Just for grins, something. Save this. We want to edit it. Okay, so there's all your header information. So we want to add a question. Now, here's where things start to get complicated. You all know about the new stuff in Pixifi. You can include images in questionnaires now, and you can set columns in questionnaires. I haven't played with this much, so if I tell you how to do that, I'm going to screw it up. So don't listen to me when it comes to this stuff. But one of the fields on here that you can utilize is custom fields. And when you click this button first as part of your question, is it allows you to select which type of custom field you're asking about, okay? This is relevant for two reasons. First of all, remember that questionnaires are not type dependent. If we'll go back here and we'll look at this for a second, you'll notice that the only thing it's asking for is the name, the template, or the reminder template, the visibility in the client portal, and the description. That's all it's asking for. It is not asking, is this specific to an event? It's not asking, is this specific to a client or a project or anything? It's just a question. Okay. The dependency is not in the questionnaire. The dependency is in the email you send out. Okay. So custom fields. I'm going to say this is my client custom fields. And here are all of the custom fields that I could ask for, okay? In this particular case, for client custom fields, how do I get to your house? Save that. And there's my first question. And the the settings for this custom field come from the custom fields, okay? If you use the action in here, and this might be valuable to someone who's asking, well, how do I see this? If you use the live preview to see your questionnaire, of course, it reminds you that this is a questionnaire template, but it does request or does ask for, how do we get to your house? And whatever they answer, this is a family joke of ours. Of course, it won't let you submit the answer, but if you don't answer, you see the little star in front of the question. Of course, the star means it's a required field. And this is a preview of what it would look like to your client. And includes all the CSS and stuff and the logo and all those things, okay? But when you save this, set up the conditions for whatever type of field this is, in your questionnaire, and make sure that you are testing it under the same conditions that you would for your client. Let's go do another custom field, and we're going to do, in this case, we're going to do an event custom field. It shows you all of the event custom fields. This could get, technically, it could get problematic if you do a event custom field for a client questionnaire, because there is no event to save the information to. I'm not sure quite how that gets handled internally, but we're just going to set this up as a questionnaire item. Describe the kind of portrait experience you've been hoping for all your life. And when you do a preview on this, it's the same kind of question. You've got this longer box. It's a 10. I think this was a 45 by 10, and this is a 45 by 5. But you see, in this case, the question is not required because we didn't require it as part of our custom fields. So the way the things are required here are the way that they're required in the custom fields. Whether or not this actually works, I don't know for sure. So if I were to say, get there, and Nirvana. Since I can't save it, obviously, all I'm doing is previewing what it looks like. So you can test that at your house, since I know all of you are still at your homes and not going out and doing anything silly. But that's a way to use them within questionnaires. Now, specific to questionnaires, is the kind of thing that I just brought up. If you have a questionnaire going out as part of your initial customer inbounding, and you don't have an event for them, if this is not going out to support an event, and you are asking an event question, I do not know what will happen. I mean, you could try that out at home and let me know, because I would love to know. But if you are setting it up as a client questionnaire, I would only use client-based custom fields if you are going to ask for custom fields at all. So you would select from your custom fields for a client if it is a client-based questionnaire. If it's an event-based questionnaire, obviously you can include either set because you have an event for it to save to, and you can ask client-based information, and it will save that too. Now, there's a couple other places that this stuff shows up. And before we go into how to use them, you will also, well, obviously we'll look at our inquiry page first. Okay, so on inquiry fields, right at the very top of your general fields on your inquiry form, and this would be my inquiry form, my inbounding form, contact form. Hide custom fields, no. If I say yes, hide custom fields, then no custom fields will be asked. And the reason why that's an option is because if you would rather send them a questionnaire and say, hey, could you answer some additional questions for us, then you may want to do it there instead of bugging them with it when they first contact you. And that's just one way to do things, okay? If you have it set up so that it's not hiding custom fields and you want them to be seen, then the advantage to that is, or depends upon what type of questions you're asking, okay? But when I go up here and I go to my custom form, you'll notice that all of these fields that are set up for my portrait brand, which is where we just went to, this is my portrait brand for portraits. You'll see that all of the fields that I had set up for portraits are being asked as part of my inquiry form. And that's one of the reasons why it is valuable to determine whether or not you want to see custom fields. And it is also valuable in your client or in your custom fields themselves on your clients, whether or not something is specific to a brand, or you remember that you could also make something private. Okay, so you saw the question over here on my, what are your children's ages? Okay, so I have a drop down for that. But if we make what are your children's ages private and save it and go back to the form and refresh it, then there's no question here about what are your children's ages. Okay, so that might be something that you decide to leave out right now. Okay, and that's just one way to use it, of course. There's a whole bunch of different ways to use these various fields. And as much as I hate the term used over and over again, the term thinking outside the proverbial box is a great way to utilize custom fields in just so many different fashions. And I think it has become a very interesting way for you to specify the questions that you want to ask that are specialized for an individual's information. And you'll notice that on this particular inquiry, it is asking what type of session is this? Well, that's not an individual question. That is an event question. And the event question is specific to the brand. So only this brand will it ask what type of session this is. And this is why these things are so, it's so important to decide all of that information in advance. Is under my events. Hello. Oh, there it goes. This is the disadvantage of living in a very rural community, is slow internet. So these custom fields, this is the custom field it's asking as an event-based custom field. And I think that's a good thing that I have this. But if I were using the inquiry form over here from, for example, my seniors brand, and I open that up and I go to the inquiry fields for my seniors, then this is obviously going to ask me for specific information for that type, for consultation. Either way, none of those other questions appear down here because they don't apply to this brand. And that is the advantage of making sure that you pre-plan everything. What do you want to know about these people? And what do you want to know about them per brand? Or in the case of events, per type. Okay, I think that's a helpful distinction between the two. So next question. So I can't just pick which custom question you want on the inquiry if you check yes, show custom fields. You can in a number of ways. I described a couple of them, but if you go to any question you can answer whether or not it is private. If it is a custom field for information that you want to retain about a client, but you don't want them to see it, if you make it private, it won't show up anywhere. You can break down an event custom field based on the event type, for example, and the brand, of course. But if you're not separating your brands by type of photography that you do or type of product that you deliver, then you may want to consider doing something more on the event type way. But when it comes to client custom fields, I'm going to set up another tab for this. I'm trying to take a drink of water, but every time I try to take a drink of water, I think of something else I want to tell you guys. Holy moly. So if we're over here on the client custom fields, for these, to be specific, the only choices that you have on client type is the wedding client and non-wedding client. What I have, just as a reminder, in case you came in late, what I'm specifically asking Tim for on this is to also make available the question or the custom field determination to be based on the client category. And I think that would be very helpful. And that way, if you want to differentiate between those different things, I mean, look at some of the categories that you can set up. You can set up a whole mess of things. Must prepay session. Well, a custom field for that person on must prepay session might be something like, or even a label, a custom field that has a label. You are required to prepay your sessions. Please contact us at this number. Or it might be something a little bit less judgy, and come up and do a yes or no question about, are you going to use a credit card or are you going to use a check? Those are the has no shows is another one where it might be great. Are you really going to show up to this appointment? Yes or no? But there's a whole mess of ways to use it if you are able to use client categories. And I think that's one of the great ways that you can be a heck of a lot more specific in your custom fields is if you could determine what custom field was used based on the category or categories that they have. It's just my special. It just looked like on your inquiry form, if you show select custom fields is show all custom fields you created, period. What if you only want 2 of them from that form and 3 others on the questionnaire? Well, that's a good question, and it's a-specific, because what we're going to do is, which custom field here did I just set for private? You know what? Let's set the model name here for private. We'll save that. So the model name is a private field for the clients. But over on, we'll go back to my inquiry page here. And we're on my seniors brand, is that right? Well, let's go switch to the seniors brand just to be sure. Okay, so those requests, that was a question specifically for the senior brand. And the inquiry page, the contact page, is going to bring up the information specific for, oh, you know what? I didn't turn that off, did I? We want to turn on custom fields. Update. And then refresh. Okay. So you'll remember that the field for what is the senior model's name is not here because it's private. Now these other 2 are on there, and you can see why If you go back to, oh, wait a minute. So how do we get to your house? That was a client field, right? So how do we get to your house? Okay, that is available on all brands. So of course it's going to show up on my senior portrait questionnaire. Now, if I made it specific, how do we get to your house? If we change the specifications on that to make it only the portrait brand and save it, and then refresh this again, Pixifi saying, why do you keep refreshing? Am I screwed something up? Now it doesn't ask me, how do you get to your house? And that's why they showed up. And that might be why you were asking that. Our test field here, this one is set for all brands. Well, we don't need the test field anymore. I'm going to remove it today. I go back in here, refresh again. Pixifi wonders what the heck is going on. And that field is now missing. So that's why you saw them, is because there were so many different ones like that. I hope that answers your question. Okay, good. So that's, once you drill down to the detail of how you can and can't show different things in a number of different ways on custom fields, for example, you can turn on and off things, their privacy, like we did over here for this item. Where do we make the item that was private? Now I'm lost. Oh, I see. Wait. All brands. This is all brands. That's what it was. Okay, so this thing isn't going to show up on your inquiry, on my inquiry form, because I made it private. So any combination of these things, using the type, using the brand, using the event type, again using the brand, turning it on and off by making it private so that it is something that it may be something that you want to ask in a questionnaire, which I think is kind of what you're asking about, is when we go over to the template for that questionnaire that we had, and that particular questionnaire test question, when we add a question and we use a custom field, and that was an event custom field. Was it an event question custom field? It was a client custom field, my bad. You guys stop laughing, right? So the field is still there and you can still request it, but it is hidden during public, on public forms, like on the proposal, fill in your name, address information. It is not on the inquiry form, but you can select it here. Okay, so I can specifically select from the client custom fields, what is the model's name, and save it. So when this questionnaire is sent out, it still gets asked, even though it's turned off. Okay, I think that's, let's just make sure I'm not lying here. Preview, model name, there it goes. So that's just one way I think, that's just one way I think you can use all of these various methods to customize how you want your custom fields to be used. Okay, looking at the question. So I want to make several custom fields, but I want them to show in different places. Like I have one that says, what color are your eyes, but don't want to ask on inquiry form, but do want to ask on a questionnaire. Then of course you can use that and just ask it on the questionnaire, because the definition, the very definition in here, the question says private determines visibility on public pages. A questionnaire is not a public page. A questionnaire is sent to an individual. So that makes it not public. So you can select it if you want, and it will get answered based on the criteria from the questionnaire. Okay, so yay, you got it. Yay, okay. Cookies all around. Actually, a cookie would be real nice right now. Okay, so I'm going to close all these pages where the forms are. All right, so let's see, where else were we going to look? We're going to look at using them inside email and SMS templates. All right, so let's go ahead and we're just going to create a new email template. And this is our test for Tony. And this is going to be an event. Nope, not event staff, event. Okay. And then, how are you? And in here, as part of your hi, contact one. Yes, you can actually type these in if you know how. If you don't have fumble fingers like I do. So in your variables and tokens, custom fields are down at the bottom. Okay, so, and it's really specific. It says event custom fields and client custom fields. So you can select any of the ones that are there and the data that is in the field. Now remember, in an email is a display device, not a question device. So what will happen is the data that is in that field will be displayed in an email. Okay, it will not be, questions won't be asked. So if your answer to a question, what is the model saying, it'll come up and it looks kind of funky, but we are looking forward to meeting you, and that's the first name of, or the model's name on, and then you go on to add all the stuff about the event. Let's see, the date, at the time, start time, in our studio located here. And then of course you're just gonna throw in an event or a location listing there. What? There it is, locations. Okay, so and then you just sign it and you're done, or it signs it and it's done. So that's the way that you're using them in emails going out. And there's obviously some different types of emails will not permit you to select these, the custom fields. Let's create another one, another email, different email. Oh, it's already in email mode, isn't it? Okay, so we're going to create a new email and we're going to use let's see, questionnaires. Well, there should be there for questionnaires because, yeah, because that's not specific or not non-specific. So gift cards, that would be a good place not to have them. So gift cards are not specific to an event. They are only specific to clients. So if it already knows who the client is and the client is purchasing, those custom fields will be available. But in order for an email to go out as a gift card type, it has to know who you are. And during the checkout process, it's going to ask custom field information that is appropriate to the brand of the client that is signing up. You'll notice that the event custom fields aren't there because gift cards are not related to an event. They are their own thing. Probably, this is a new type. I don't think it's going to be there. Yeah, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'm not afraid to admit that stuff. Special dates would not include anything more than the first and last name of the person who's receiving the email. So no custom fields on special dates, sorry. Vendors, well, why would you have client custom fields on a vendor, right? So that's just vendor information. So you can see that it depends on the type of email that you're creating as to the custom field information that's available. Just plan accordingly. If you're planning your emails to go out, questionnaires, for example, are going to have access to custom field information simply because the hope is, or the belief is, that you're going to know who the client is that you're seeing this that you're sending this questionnaire out to. You will notice that there are no custom fields available on questionnaire emails for events. That's because a questionnaire is non-type specific. It is not an event, or it is not event specific. It's not project specific. It is everything specific. So it only will allow you to use client custom fields and not event custom fields. What have I left out? Is there anything else that you are not sure where you can use these things? I'm happy to turn everybody's microphone back on if everybody promises to be nice. Nobody says they're not going to be nice, so I sometimes worry about Jessica, but I'm just kidding, Jess, really. So if you want to speak and your microphones are on, I'm happy to listen to you. Oh, there's a question. Is there any hope that we can just have checkbox next to the question we want to include if we requested it to Tim with this word? So how does that work? What do you have in mind there?
Hey there, Tony. It's Madison. I'm just wondering I just think it would be so much easier for me if in clients, if I could create all the different type of custom fields I would want. And then when I create a proposal or something, I could just check the ones I want to include for that particular proposal.
I see what you mean. That's a great feature request. But you definitely want to make that through Tim. Simply because I just know that it's not something that is currently available. I do know that. But it is also something that you would have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get to that point.
Okay. I just didn't know. I mean, to me, it would just simplify.
It's something that you could go through Tim on and say, hey, I want this, and this is how I want it. Or what I want to be able to do, I want to be able to say, I want these 4 custom fields, and I want to not show these 3, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a good idea. I would definitely send it to it.
Hey, Tony, I think that's kind of what I was trying to say with like an inquiry form and your options for show fields or not an option to just say, yeah, I want custom fields on this inquiry form, but I only want these 3 questions that are on, my choices of custom fields that I've made. I only want these 3 to show up on that inquiry page.
I see what you mean. Okay. So is it specific based on any criteria that is already existing, or is it based on criteria that you want to specify on the fly?
Well, no, I just want to I want to create a bunch of inquiry fields that I want to use throughout Pixifi. So I want some of those inquiry fields to show up on an inquiry, form. I want some of those custom fields to show up on a questionnaire. I want some of those custom forms to be able to be used on a proposal. Like I want to pick and select which ones use them when I set it up, not all or nothing.
Okay. So for that, would it be useful that you could select the fields that are used by privacy, because the privacy setting only applies to things that are public facing. So that would be your proposals and your inquiry form, but not be specific to your questionnaires, because questionnaires are not public facing.
Yes, and I got that from your explanation. That seems like a good workaround, but like I think a more direct approach would be, which ones do you want to show up? Which ones do you not?
I see. Okay. Yeah, and you're right. And that would be helpful. And that's something I would send to Tim as well. And Madison says that my microphone sounds crazy. So everybody hearing that? Craziness?
I am. The feedback.
So is there feedback? Hold on, let me check my connection here. How rude. Let's see if it goes on.
It just happened after you turned on all of our microphones, so it might be because of that.
It might be that. Yeah, it might be having something to do with the speaker I'm using. The microphone just off. But okay. Well, sorry about that. I'll turn off everybody's microphone and finish up here. I think there's a lot of good stuff here, and okay, that's nice. Answer those questions. Okay. I think custom fields have a lot of great places, and there's a lot of great ways to use them, whether it's on an inquiry form or during a proposal, or in a questionnaire, and the output for them can be on your emails, like we discussed. You can just drop down and select them wherever you want to use them. It's not complete, because if you're asking for features, not fix the problem. Sorry about that. I'm going to switch to a different microphone. If you give me just a second, I'll switch to. Let's switch to this guy. Okay. Does that take care of the problem? Yes. Okay, good. Then I'll just not speak into that microphone now. Hopefully. Oh my goodness gracious. That also digs into my ears. Boy, oh boy. And with ears my size, you can imagine what that kind of pain is going on. All right. And yes, it is true that as you grow older, your ears get bigger. Because I used to have teeny tiny little ears, but now I've got great big ears. Okay, so we're off of the ear thing. We're done talking about that. Just to kind of wrap up, I think there's a lot of room for added features, and I think the ones that you guys have suggested, it would be great to send those on to Tim, and not from the standpoint that I think you should expect it, in the next few days or whatever, because if you saw the wish list, and I have, you would understand why Tim is busy all the time. He had to set some boundaries. He doesn't work on the weekends as little as possible, and he's a busy dude. And there's only 2 of them now, one for the app and one for the desktop version or the web version. And I'm trying to do more with the training stuff. And this kind of feedback, boy, this kind of feedback is massively useful. It's extraordinarily helpful when you guys come up with these features and things that you want to know and you want to do in a different, better way, because it makes the program better. Because I can also pass along my thoughts to Tim on these kinds of things, and just kind of bolster you saying, hey, I would love for this to be a feature. And then me also saying, hey, Tim, I'd really like to see this feature. And he's going, I just got that from somebody else the other day. So keep doing the feedback and keep letting me know what other kinds of features that you want to see, especially as they relate to things that can be personalized and customized within Pixifi, because I just think it's like super, super useful to have that kind of stuff. I'm going to close this out. I hope everybody learned a little something today and how to use things. You can join the tutorial notifications, emails that go out, emails and text messages, by going to this link. This is actually 149517. And that specifically is set up to get emails and messages when there's something new going on. You'll receive first updates on live events. You'll get new tutorials about that gets posted on my channels, special offers. I've never sent out a special offer yet, so don't think I'm going to spam you to death. And then stay tuned to the YouTube channel, because of course you're going to get notifications there too when I do a tutorial. I just finished one that I'm going to put up there probably in the next day or two. I'm actually experimenting with new video software that I'm working with, and adding a few more effects that makes it easier to view. Everybody have a wonderful day. I hope you're staying safe, and I look forward to the next time. Take care. Bye-bye.